Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for the 5th of July. It's Friday. I hope you all had a great 4th of July holiday. We're ready to rock and roll this morning. I know when I woke up about 6 a.m., the market opened 7:30 my time. I woke about 5:45 and I was like, I could probably squeeze in a little bit more time. And then I woke up and it was 7:20 and I was running like a maniac. I was not prepared. I stayed up too late last night. But welcome out, everybody. Hope you had a great holiday, a great day trading here today. Certainly an interesting day, showing some resolve from the bulls here today. And hey there, Yago, good to see you, my friend. Hope you are doing well, sir. Always great to have you live with us. We gapped down on the open, and for the first little bit, there was some selling, broadly speaking, in the market. Now, it really didn't do much to mess up charts or anything like that. But a couple hours into the trading day, it almost seems like, oh, wait, we left off feeling really good about things. We still feel really good about things. And the bulls really took charge the second part of the trading day. No way around that one. A pretty strong rally on the intraday. On the earnings side of things, one more light week. Next week will be pretty light, and then we'll be in it, right? Then it'll be earnings season. Pepsi, the big name, coming out with earnings next week. You've got a Fastenal, Delta Airlines, just a handful of S&P 500 companies. Be sure to check those earnings calendars as you're building your trades. Think about it as you're managing your trades. If you know that can impact, in my mind at least, if we're willing to hold through a pullback or something along those lines. Of course, I don't hold swing trades through earnings unless they're earning specific trades, which I guess wouldn't make them swing trades. So do keep that in mind as you're building your trades, managing your trades. Keep those upcoming earnings in mind as we go forward. We'll be talking lots of earnings, whether we like it or not. So over on the S&P, gap down early and really spent the first hour just kind of drifting. Seemed like it was just going to be let's take a profit day and call this short week good. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute, let's do it. Let's get buying here again. And the whole second part of the day rallying up. So a little bit of profit taking towards the very end of the day, but still closing pretty strong here, as you can see on the S&P 15-minute chart. And good afternoon, Linda. Welcome out, and happy belated 4th of July to you. Hope you had a great time with your friends and family. It really didn't change anything, right? You look at the S&P. We weren't able to take out yet yesterday. Well, I'm glad this week's over. Wednesday's high always messes with my head. So we weren't able to push through that. We can kind of look at that as our little tiny short-term resistance pushing through as a little bit of confirmation that there's still room to run in the short term. Technically speaking, I mean, it's really hard to say anything other than, broadly speaking, the market's pretty bullish. S&P pushing all-time highs, the NASDAQ trying, the Dow doing it. I mean, right now, signs are all pretty positive as we move into this earnings season. I'm interested in seeing how that will impact how the overall view of the market is. Of course, we've got our Fed announcement here in July. That might be something that could either could have an impact one way or another. We'll see. Hey, Yoko, great to see you. Good afternoon, Emily. Always a pleasure. And yeah, happy belated Candidate Day to you as well. I was thinking that as we were celebrating, I was like, I know a few people out in Canada. They probably wanted a little bit of shout out. It's the first, right? I believe it's the first. I've never been to Canada. One day, maybe I will come pay you a visit, Emily. So still really solid over on the Dow. Again, hard to say anything too negative. We, of course, always want to be, cautiously optimistic, I guess, when we're seeing things. But trust your eyes at this point is how I'm looking at it. Things breaking out. A little less follow through on the Dow than I would have loved to see, all things being equal. But that's just the day that it was. I mean, with us dipping down on the open, we weren't just likely to hit new highs. We needed to kind of get started a little earlier in the day, still holding right above that breakout point, still above the 9 EMA. Things are still looking pretty strong over on the Dow Jones as well. course, NASDAQ right behind them, knocking on the door of that breakout. This break could happen as early as Monday, and it could never happen at all, right? But we're right there knocking on the door of resistance on the NASDAQ at that all-time high. Certainly would like to see that breakout from a bullish perspective as a little bit of extra confirmation for us. So again, really pretty much where we left off. It was just a very interesting intraday. It didn't really change the daily charts all that much, but certainly showed us that the bulls, they're still in this thing. They're liking what they're seeing. And lastly, over on the rut, just kind of hanging around, battling in that 1575 range. Not really a lot beyond this swing high that we set up here a couple of weeks ago. Not really a lot until that 1600 zone. I think we have to call it at this point in time. So if we can actually get a little bit of follow through, should see a little bit of movement in the Russell as well. So, as you can kind of see, I mean, we're above moving averages, we're breaking resistance, we're knocking on the door if we haven't done it yet. So still looking like it's going to be a pretty bullish bias for me, at least, going into next week. Over in the sectors, and I'll tell you, I messed up my my watch list today. Somehow I changed it. I was going, I always do the, my watch list for next week, 7/5, 6/28. Somehow after I did the materials, I went into the materials and then I built the rest of the list out in there, and it was going to be way too much time to clean it up, so I left it. So not everything in here is materials today, but materials definitely a nice little bounce back as well. Now, most areas were very similar, right? Gap down, nice rally throughout the second part of the trading day. Certainly no exception over in the materials, most notably holding that breakout of that $58 zone. Still a nice area to be looking at. We've got things knocking on the door of breaks. You've got Lynn knocking on the door after a nice little consolidation period, knocking on the door of a break. We've got ECL after that nice little run, after finally breaking that little resistance from last week, potentially in a little bit of a breakout type of a pattern as well. I also thought Lynn was interesting. They just, I don't know what to make of Lynn. Let's see if I can actually find them. Let me just go to their list because they're going to be a weird one. They broke above that 200, or lib, there we go. They broke, that helps, broke above that 200, but have really flatlined. And they've really flatlined for several weeks now. This is a nice little consolidation period, about a month until earnings. I'm interested if this one can break to the upside, but it's really odd, I think, how little it's done. It made sense when it was battling the 200. Hasn't been able to break that intraday resistance, though. If you scrunch this thing down into a shorter term time frame, it's a very, very tight consolidation zone. So this one's going to be interesting. I don't know what you do with it necessarily, but I think it's an interesting one to follow next week. And good afternoon, Patricia. Great to see you. So we're still looking strong as we're looking in the material sector. I think there's no reason to look at it any differently than we really have ever since we broke through that $58 zone. Not a lot of resistance. Many of the big names within that space are knocking on the door of breakouts themselves. So certainly an area that I'm going to like going into next week. Not as many trading opportunities as I'd like, but a part of that was earnings. We're now in that type of season where a lot of trades just get disqualified. The chart looks great, but earnings are in 9 days or something like that. And that is just what we have to deal with. Over in energy, if we were hoping for clarity, I don't feel like we got it here today. Another little bit of small body candle, had a decent response to today overall, but we are still very much in a weird, nobody seems to have a good read on energy right now. And as long as we're continuing to dance around in this area, I think we have to continue to be very, very careful, whichever side we're looking at. There's still going to be things out there. I'll be keeping Chevron in my bullish list until it's given me not a reason not to have it in there. But realistically, it's going to, I have a hard time believing Chevron can break to the upside without this sector showing at least some upward movement. So not a lot has changed here. Really, we're just stuck in this range. If you take away this one gap out that sold off all day long to get us started, we really have done almost nothing price wise for several weeks now. So I think it's just building up. Nobody really seems like they have a good handle on it. I know I certainly don't. So I will continue to let it do what it wants to do without me. Over in financials, another good solid day overall, pushing into that last little bit of resistance, as we kind of talked about on Wednesday. If we can get through that, there's really not a lot until that $29 mark. Nothing major, at least until that $29 mark. Of course, we all know the story of the insurance companies. We know the rapid return to glory that we've seen in some of the exchanges, ICE most notably. Goodness gracious, that has been pretty darn nice with the exchanges. But again, we've talked a lot about it. The banks have shown a lot more strength. That's definitely a positive. Now, they are early, so it won't be next week. It'll be the week after, towards the tail end of the week, where these banks start to report earnings. So earnings will kind of be hitting the financial sector first, as it always does, but still want to see it push through that. I think that would be a little bit of a signal to make me feel a little bit better, but bulls very much in control over in the financial sector. Really interesting price action. I don't know what if it means much, but look at this long tail that we formed on the industrial ETF here today after gapping down, just like the market, really selling and then really firing back and ultimately ending up in that very, very long shadow or tail, closing near the top of the trading day. We've developed a little bit of an issue around $78 on the ETF. I think that's kind of the next signal for the continuation, in my eyes at least, breaking above 78. Definitely a positive thing. And with us kind of hanging around, getting pushed down there a few times now, I think it's worth keeping an eye on that as we're moving forward. But overall, holding support. And as long as that's true, I still look for it to continue to work to the upside, with $79 as that next level of resistance beyond that 78 zone that we are looking at. Over in tech, nice little breakout developing over here as well. So kind of breaking a little bit on Wednesday, just below what I think we can use in almost any chart that looks like this for confirmation. I think we can use breaking above that Wednesday high. So whether it's XLK or an individual company or whatever, the SPY, if that's what we want to go with, I think for me at least, that's the confirmation early next week that there's still a good head of steam with the bulls to get the week started, or maybe it's a little bit later in the week. So that's how I will be looking at it. Tech looks pretty darn strong right now. If we can get a little bit of follow through, the NASDAQ breaking out, not a bad thing at all. We have that interesting, at least, I was going to call it nice, but it probably depends on you, but a very interesting pullback developing in the semiconductors right now, working right back in towards that old resistance zone. Little bit of a turnaround candle here today. Need to see some upward movement at the very least to kind of break today's high tomorrow type of a deal to get me on board. But I'm liking where we're at. A lot of those semiconductors are looking pretty interesting to me, at least in this little bit of a pullback. Still need a little confirmation, I believe. But if we can break out of the NASDAQ and in the tech sector as a whole, get some upward movement in some of these semiconductors, that might make for an interesting week in technology if we're able to pull that off. That's kind of how I'll be planning going into next week. Whether it'll pull it off or not, I guess we'll have to see. So not anything above us. These are, of course, all-time highs, that high from Wednesday. So a lot of room to run over in the tech sector as well. Just another day of the more defensive areas doing what they do best, working right back into that old resistance zone here on XLP. Aggressively just taking out today's high on Monday could be a little bit of a signal, a little more conservatively breaking above what's going to be the weekly high on the weekly candlestick can be that signal if you want to take a little more conservative approach to it. But this is a break as far as I'm concerned. I need that follow through because we closed right there, right? We need to break and get that follow through, but I would call that a little bit of a break. 58 still the support zone, that 50-day moving average combined with that swing low. Definitely a very important price on this ETF in my eyes to be looking for. I don't expect to be testing it anytime soon, but that is where I will have support on the ETF. Little bit of sideways action developing in the utility sector. Overall, still really strong. I want to see it break at this point. I'm fine with existing utility trades, anything that I may have got into on the pullback or something along those lines. But for that next signal, I really want to see it break through this resistance zone. Maybe that's just being a little too cautious. Mostly it's utilities can go sideways for a while, as you guys know, right? We watched it for 2 months, just hanging around doing very, very little. I'm not necessarily concerned, but I know that that easily could be the way that it goes this time and trades within this trading range. So I'll either be looking to buy the dip, so to speak, if we see some pullback into that 50-day moving average, or the break as that continuation signal. Perfectly happy with my overall stance on utilities being unchanged. But for new trades, I almost feel like we need to let it come out of this range to the upside, or at least work back into support if we're looking at new buying opportunities. So it might be a tough week without a break for me, at least on utilities, to want to get into anything too new. Over in healthcare, not much to see here on the ETF. We still, if we can take out that Wednesday high, I think 96 is, as close to as foregone as you can get. If the market's breaking resistance, if healthcare can take out that resistance, there really is nothing on this ETF. So many of the charts have shown tremendous strength as of late. My expectations are, now that we have held that 93 zone, right? We all know that zone is anywhere between 93 and 93.75 with all the price action that we've seen here. If we can continue get that confirmation, I expect us to be pushing into 96 within the healthcare sector overall. An area that I do continue to like. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are definitely some charts that are a little more bearish than bullish, but I think for the most part, I'm seeing more strength than weakness. Overall, the ETF, higher highs, higher lows. Really, as long as we hold this swing low down here, which is quite a ways away at 91.50 or thereabouts, I'm going to have a bullish bias on healthcare personally. Probably the biggest technical winner of the day, I would say, is XLY, the discretionary sector, not only holding the breakout from Wednesday, but actually building upon it. Not by much, right? But a win is a win, as they say. If you look at this on the intraday, really fired back, just like the market. But unlike the market, we put in a new high, a new all-time high in the case of this ETF. A lot of strength, a lot of good things. Even some of those brick and mortar types that are almost always looking somewhere bearish, to me at least, showing some signs of holding support, not reversal, not anything that's tempting me, but you've seen Macy's kind of hold support. Been watching Urban for a breakdown and still very much in play, but as of right now, still holding some support. And those are just, of course, the uglies of the world, right? That doesn't account for all of the strong stocks. Starbucks holding very strong here today. McDonald's not holding up quite as strong, but still holding up pretty darn strong after that 2-day burst that we saw this week. Continues to be a lot of strength in this area overall. Again, as always, I think the best way to handle this sector is make sure we're going not chasing after the things that have been beat up. I want to be trading into things of strength always, really. But with this sector, I do think it can sometimes be misleading that, hey, seeing a lot of good strength in the sector, let's run off and look to buy some Urban Outfitters. Maybe that's a great idea, but I don't think it's a great idea, generally speaking. So a lot of strength over here. REITs, same as everything else. Big dip down early, nice rally to close the day, still have some room. I feel a lot more comfortable, for better or worse, with the room that we have to work to the upside on the REITs versus the utilities right now. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, but that is how I'm seeing it personally. I kind of want to see utilities break. I still believe there's room into that resistance level in real estate, as long as we're holding this recent swing low down here, which is a ways away. I'm going to continue to be looking at it from a bullish point of view. Another big winner today was the communication services. You got to give it some credit. Really nice development. Little bit of upward movement can certainly, really no technical reason why we can't push that recent high, just above $51 if we can push through this little 2-day resistance zone. Of course, what's going to help that out is Facebook knocking on the door of a breakout. Could happen as early as Monday, right? Again, could happen not at all, but we're close enough that, yeah, break that. That is definitely a breakout, in my opinion, if we can take that resistance level out. And Google pushing through that resistance early. We still have to contend with this 50-day moving average. If we can get a little follow through, though, that's a reversal in my mind on Google. Higher highs, higher lows. Want to see that follow through. Got to contend with this falling 50-day moving average. And I don't know that that's something I'd want to trade necessarily, but for the overall strength of the sector, that would certainly be a positive for that XLC ETF. You did see EA just take a tremendous dive here today. Have I mentioned how little I like EA? Probably have once or twice, right? So you kind of give people a very short opportunity on that little break, and then probably hit your stop loss on Wednesday, but probably hit it today if somehow it missed that. And now all of a sudden we're right back at support. Right, yeah, right back at support. I want to see how this one develops. If this thing breaks, that's a breakdown. It's EA, so I'll probably do nothing with it. They are not a very friendly stock to trade, in my opinion, and they're definitely not friendly to me. Maybe they know all the mean things I say when I'm complaining about their video games. Disney, of course, the most exciting one, still pushing on that resistance. Not broken out here just yet, still have a ways to go before earnings, so certainly a breakout. I think you could argue taking out today's high as early as Monday could be an aggressive signal on Disney. So pretty decent day. And really the big thing to bring out of it is how much the bulls bought in on that intraday drop. You know, they didn't just kind of buy in, they really bought in. And to me, that shows that there's still some strength and resolve in them. Technically, it makes perfect sense, right? Charts are looking very bullish across the board. Over on the VIX, not much, just kind of hanging as to be expected right now. So volatility's dipped down a little bit off of where we recently were. The dollar broke out of that little ceiling that we put in this week and really ran. These candles always concern me from the other side of the coin. You see those gobble up candles. Another great candle here today. I put the dollar right at $50 line today. I have really no opinion from a trader's perspective, but I think you could start to make a case that, hey, we put in higher lows and higher highs. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch from a swing trading perspective, but right now there is definitely some bullish momentum in the dollar. If we can close this 50-day moving average, 97.50 next level of resistance. Of course, then we've got that 98 to 98.20 range that we've, of course, we've all watched. But a really strong day here in the dollar. Nice little development. Wish it would have developed a little slower, maybe, but a nice clean 3-day top breakout here today. Certainly, probably treated the day traders right in the dollar here today. Gold continues to trade within this big range. Again, it's kind of tough to trade right now from a swing trading perspective. Ideally, maybe it kind of, if you're not in, at least it goes sideways for a little bit and develops a breakout opportunity, but still holding above, the breakout point, higher swing low, all of that fun stuff. 1440, that zone's, something we need to be keeping an eye on going forward, but we're a ways. We're kind of in the middle right now. And when we're in the middle, it probably is intraday or see you tomorrow, right? So I think that's where I am, at least on gold right now. Silver kind of messed its chart up a little bit here today after breaking this swing low, breaking this bottom of this zone, and a very clean, you know it when you see it, right? I didn't even know what number to give this 15, 20, 25 range. But I know that we closed below whatever that number was here. Still some things to prop us up in the form of the 200 and the 50-day moving average. But that really complicates this chart from a swing perspective in my mind. Still, as it is right now, from a buy side above 1560 could still make some sense. We're a ways away from that. From the sell side, I think we're going to need something to develop. I can't really see a great technical setup developing at least early next week here on silver. So back to the watch list like you ever left. I had about 12 hours of thinking maybe a pullback on silver, but not meant to be at this point. Natural gas fired back in a big way here today. I went to see what the heck could cause such a big day in natural gas. And apparently August is going to be a hot one. So natural gas can do that. It can just go crazy on weather reports, right or wrong. Now, what that probably, you can kind of see, it ran all the way into that breakdown point, into that 50-period moving average. So if we bring back our weekly, which is what we've really been working with, we're kind of testing that old breakdown zone. I will certainly, that's going to take a lot more than a warm August and a nice response to get me involved with natural gas. But if we push back above that, I think we get back into some sort of neutrality. As long as we're holding below that 50, I think we can kind of look for potentially some retracements to develop. That probably is going to take a little bit of time technically. So if it just sells dramatically on Monday, it's probably going to be difficult to try to trade it from a swing perspective at least. So I'm going to watch how it responds here. As long as we're below this breakdown point, I argue you cannot buy natural gas no matter what your logic and reasons and strategies are. Of course, no one has to agree with me, but that is where I find myself. If we go above it, I mean, that would be a bullish signal. I just would be hard pressed to think it's a comfortable trading signal personally. But if we can clear that, that is a big challenge. That is a big deal from a technical point of view. So something that we can kind of keep an eye on early here next week. And lastly, over in crude, a little bit of a bounce back day, showing a little bit of upward momentum, a little bit of a messy chart, but I'm just going to steal you now. Developed a little bit of a support through the course of this week off of those lows. A little bit of upward movement back above that 58 mark could be a retracement. My issue is we've got a lot to deal with right now, hanging around that 9, the $60 resistance. You know, while I'm not overly concerned about those averages, they are there. I'd rather they not be there. I think from a bullish point of view, it's the break above 60 is probably the better signal than trying to trade into this pullback, if that's in fact what it is. We've got a little bit of a floor here that's developed at 56. If we break this floor, I would expect it's pretty easy to drop into 55. That's not much room, not much, right? But there really isn't any history beyond that. So again, I think this is one of those we're going to need a little bit of time to develop. We have created a little bit of positivity here, right? So I think there's reason to be at least moderately optimistic, like Coach Mark is doing. I think he sold another put on the halftime report today. I wonder how many times he sells puts during the halftime report, because I know he does it more often than he tells you guys. But I think that's a sensible way to be looking at crude, a little bit longer term, boomerang trade style right now. Above 60, that could be a little bit of a different, maybe a nice swing trading opportunity develop over there. So that is where we find ourselves after the shortened week. Definitely an interesting week for sure. We looked at pretty much the material stocks that I wanted to look at. So kind of a sneak peek going into the scouting report meeting here. I got to find where I started off here. You do have a CC if I'm looking for a bearish breakdown. They are in the materials sector. If we see some selling and a break of that support, might be something interesting. Canadian National here too, natural, a little bit of a breakdown candidate, holding on at a little bit of a support level. Brought up GNTX in the halftime report, interesting little pullback. We have to be careful. We have earnings just in 2 weeks, but if we were to get the entries we liked early next week, maybe there would be enough room. I think there probably would be for me. Of course, Tyson knocking on the door of a big old breakout just like that. I think, you guys know me. The only financial with so many earnings coming up that I had was old Chubb here, still on the break. Going to have to happen early in the week or going to run out of time from an earnings point of view. I didn't get Edwards. I don't know. I lost them somehow. I don't know what I did, how I messed up my list. But Edwards, I saw you talking with Cody here. That can go away on Twitter, Emily. Certainly an interesting pullback candidate, as was Boston Science. Certainly an interesting pullback, sitting right on that 9 EMA, going to start next week. Should be an interesting one. BLDR, don't know a lot about these guys. A construction supply company knocking on the door of a little bit of a break. OC, another interesting one, a little bit of a shallow pullback, a little bit of, with the, much like the market, hammer type of candlestick. Certainly not the only one going on there. Ilka's got a few as well. Burlington, this is going to be a tough one to maybe think of an entry because of how choppy it's been. But I brought these up probably last week. Big major level of resistance. They're working right into it. Be a little trickier to get in because we've kind of stuck our nose above it and failed so many times. It's not a very clear number, but certainly something I'm going to be keeping an eye on here. I like your target play on your watch list there, Ilka, quite a bit. Little bit of a breakout on target here. broke out of this resistance, this longer term resistance, and a little bit of upward movement next week could certainly be a little bit of a bullish breakout. I like that one there, Ilka, quite a bit. WWE, well, probably, not a next week thing. Still, on a breakdown would be something interesting. Got that up over on the Instagram. Had some problems with Instagram, but the WWE video is over on the Instagram channel now. If you want to check that out, I certainly look forward to doing that. And of course, in tech, we've got pullbacks, applied materials showing a little bit of up, strength relative to the semiconductors. I thought that was an interesting candidate. You have data that's gone sideways after a huge gap up on earnings. Probably going to stay in this range for a while, but if we ever break really one way or the other, could be something there worth looking at. Intuit, really nice looking chart here, knocking on the door of a breakout on Intuit here as well. LSE, another breakout candidate in the semiconductor space. I'm going to take a quick peek here at EVRG with Ilka. I didn't look at these guys. Oh, a little bit of a breakout opportunity in the utility space. That's all right. I can see why you like that, especially if we can see the utility ETF break resistance along with it. Southern, WEC, all of those utility stocks. Certainly, I'm not going to argue. Well, I want to see it break resistance. I'm not arguing against utility stocks in any way, shape, or form at this point in time. And take a quick peek here at FMC, holding that break, just hanging around, right? Just hanging around. A little bit of upward movement could be there. And that's what's really cool. You look at this market, we see so many breakout candidates. If the market breaks, many of these breakout candidates are going to be breaking as well, right? And then it's kind of one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. Well, if there's a breakout, I'm going to buy it, or at least I'm going to not sell it, right, until I get some better technical signals. So it should be an interesting week. I have a hard time not having a pretty darn bullish skew going into next week. But as always, we want to make sure we have some bearish breakdown or some bearish trade candidates. Certainly VMW here sitting right at support. That's going to fit that bill. If we see some selling, maybe something there to take a closer look at. So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the market recap today and this week. It was certainly an interesting one and shortened out. I'm glad next week will be normal. Yesterday did feel weird, and today felt even weirder because yesterday at least I had stuff to do. Today it felt like, why am I working? I'm supposed to be hanging out. It's supposed to be Sunday, but it wasn't, whether I wanted it to be or not. But now we're getting into the weekend, so I'll catch up, get back to normal routine. I'm very routine oriented, so anything that throws it off, I always struggle with. It's embarrassing, but it is what it is, as always. So at least you got to know yourself, right? Thank you guys so much for joining me. Always great to see you guys. Always great to go over this stuff with you. Thank you for talking markets with me. Of course, if you are new to the channel, we always encourage you to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us over on Instagram at Tackle Trading, at Tackle Trading on Twitter. You can find me at FrankMartin23. Going to head off to the scouting report meeting here, get this stuff set up. So we're all ready to rock and roll on Monday morning, and I can officially go into catch-up mode tomorrow, and maybe a nice Stranger Things marathon might be in order. We'll see if that's what happens. But thank you guys so much. As always, it is great to spend some time with you. I hope you all had a great holiday. You guys have a great weekend. We'll get you those scouting reports here Saturday afternoon, evening, so you're ready to go on Monday. But have a fun weekend. Be ready to go. But of course, spend a little you time too. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ilka, Patricia, Linda. Always great to see you guys. Guys, get out of here. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you on Monday. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.